The Road of Shadows. I clutched the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white as the headlights cut through the darkness. The night was unusually silent, the only sound being the rumbling of my car's engine as it devoured the miles of lonely road ahead. I was driving through an unfamiliar stretch of countryside, surrounded by dense forests that seemed to be watching me, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. It was a moonless night, and the stars above were barely visible, leaving me with an overwhelming sense of isolation. The only source of light came from the flickering beams of my car's headlights, illuminating the road in front of me and casting eerie shadows on the trees that lined the sides. As I continued driving, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. The atmosphere was heavy with an unexplained unease, as if the very air around me was tainted with malevolence. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild, that I was simply tired and my mind was playing tricks on me. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the road. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it was a person, dressed in tattered clothes and staring directly at me. I instinctively slammed on the brakes, my car screeching to a halt just a few feet away from the mysterious figure. Fear washed over me like a chilling wave, and I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to drive away as fast as I could, but another part was consumed by curiosity. Against my better judgment, I rolled down the window and called out to the figure. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice trembling with apprehension. The figure didn't respond, its eyes fixated on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I could barely make out its features in the dim light, but there was something undeniably unsettling about its presence. Suddenly, the figure began to move, slowly approaching the car. Panic surged through my veins and I quickly rolled up the window, desperately trying to lock all the doors. But as I did, I caught a glimpse of its face. It was distorted, almost inhuman. Its eyes were hollow voids, devoid of any life, and its mouth was stretched unnaturally wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. A gasp escaped my lips as I realized I was face to face with something that defied all logic and reason. Terrified, I stepped on the gas pedal, my car lurching forward. The figure lunged at the vehicle, its long, bony fingers scratching against the window, leaving deep gouges in the glass. I could hear its blood-curdling screams echoing in my ears, growing louder with each passing second. I drove with reckless abandon, desperately trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and the creature. But no matter how fast I went, it seemed to keep pace effortlessly, its twisted form appearing in my rearview mirror. My mind raced with thoughts of escape, but every turn I made only led me deeper into the labyrinth of winding roads, the darkness swallowing me whole. It was as if the very landscape itself was conspiring against me, trapping me in a nightmarish loop of despair. Time lost all meaning as I continued my frenzied escape, my sanity slowly unraveling with each passing mile. The figure, relentless in its pursuit, grew closer with every heartbeat. Its unearthly shrieks reverberated through the air, penetrating my very soul. I knew then that I was doomed, that there was no escape from this nightmare. I had stumbled upon something ancient and malevolent, something that should have remained hidden in the depths of the night. Just as I was about to succumb to despair, a faint glimmer of hope emerged on the horizon. A small, isolated gas station appeared, its neon sign flickering in the distance like a beacon of salvation. Summoning every ounce of strength I had left, I steered the car towards it, praying that it wasn't some cruel illusion. As I pulled into the gas station, I stumbled out of the car, my legs trembling beneath me. The figure was still lurking in the darkness, its haunting presence growing stronger with each passing second. I rushed into the gas station, desperately seeking refuge. Inside, the air was stale and the dimly lit store seemed frozen in time. The cashier, an elderly man with tired eyes, looked at me with a mix of concern and understanding. Without a word, he beckoned me to follow him into a back room. In the safety of the dimly lit space, the old man began to speak in a hushed tone, as if the very walls were listening. "You've stumbled upon the road of shadows," he said, his voice quivering with a mixture of fear and resignation. "It's a cursed path that preys on the lost and the weary. Once you enter, there is no escape." I listened in horror as he recounted tales of countless souls who had fallen victim to the road of shadows, their spirits forever trapped in its grasp. The figure outside was an embodiment of that curse, a relentless pursuer with an insatiable hunger for the living. Time seemed to stand still as the figure's unearthly screams pierced the air, growing louder and more insistent. The old man handed me a small talisman, its surface adorned with ancient symbols. "This may grant you temporary reprieve," he said, his eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and resignation. "But remember, it is only a delay, not a true escape." With a heavy heart, I stepped back outside, clutching the talisman tightly in my hand. The figure was still there, its twisted form writhing in the darkness. But as I held the talisman aloft, a glimmer of light emanated from it, pushing back the encroaching shadows. For a brief moment, the figure recoiled, its unearthly cries fading into the night. Seizing the opportunity, I sprinted towards my car, the talisman's protective light guiding my way. I started the engine and sped away, leaving the cursed road and its horrors behind. As I drove into the night, the figure's haunting presence gradually faded from my rearview mirror. Though I had narrowly escaped its clutches, I knew deep down that the road of shadows would forever haunt my dreams, a chilling reminder of the terrors that lurk in the darkest corners of our world.
The Haunting Hitchhiker. The night was shrouded in darkness as I sped down the desolate highway, the hum of the engine providing the only solace in my solitary journey. I had always enjoyed the thrill of driving at night, the open road stretching out before me like a mysterious abyss. But little did I know that this particular night would be far from ordinary. As I pressed further into the night, my mind began to wander, fatigue and restlessness clouding my judgment. Thoughts of an upcoming deadline and personal troubles plagued my thoughts, distracting me from the road ahead. Lost in my own world, I failed to notice the flicker of movement on the side of the road until it was too late. Brakes screeched and tires skidded as I swerved to avoid a figure standing at the edge of the highway. My heart pounded in my chest as adrenaline surged through my veins. I narrowly missed the stranger, his dark eyes locked onto mine for a fleeting moment before disappearing into the inky darkness. Regaining control of the car, I pulled over to the side of the road, my mind racing with a mixture of relief and curiosity. Despite the late hour and my better judgment, I felt an inexplicable urge to know more about the mysterious hitchhiker. Ignoring the voice of reason, I decided to turn back, to offer assistance or at least an explanation for my reckless driving. As I approached the spot where I had seen the figure, a wave of unease washed over me. The night seemed to grow darker, the air thick with an otherworldly stillness. Doubts gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I pushed them aside, my curiosity propelling me forward. I searched the area meticulously, scanning the roadside for any signs of the hitchhiker, but to my dismay, there was no trace of him. Disappointed and frustrated, I returned to my car, ready to resume my journey. Just as I was about to pull back onto the road, a soft tap on my window made me jump. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to face the hitchhiker, his haunting presence inexplicably at my side. "I see you're looking for something," he whispered, his voice chillingly calm. Caught off guard, I hesitated for a moment before mustering the courage to respond. "Yes, I saw you on the road. Are you okay?" A sinister smile crept across his face as he leaned in closer. "Oh, I'm more than okay. I'm looking for a ride that will take me far away from here." Compelled by a mixture of sympathy and intrigue, I found myself agreeing to give him a lift. I unlocked the car doors and he slid into the passenger seat. The air grew heavy with an unsettling energy, but I chose to ignore the warning signs, my mind clouded by a newfound sense of adventure. As we drove, the hitchhiker's presence became more oppressive, his features contorting in the dim light. The road seemed to stretch on forever, the landscape shifting and warping around us. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach, but I was too deep in my bad decisions to turn back now. As the minutes turned to hours, I realized we had veered off the beaten path, lost in an unfamiliar maze of winding roads. Panic surged through me, but the hitchhiker seemed unaffected, his eyes fixed on some unseen destination. The surroundings grew increasingly ominous, with twisted trees looming over us like skeletal sentinels. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, whispering secrets I couldn't comprehend. A chill crawled up my spine, and a foreboding sense of dread settled over me. Suddenly, the hitchhiker's demeanor shifted. His once calm and composed demeanor twisted into something menacing. He turned to me, his eyes ablaze with an otherworldly glow. "You shouldn't have picked me up," he hissed, his voice laced with malice. "You've entered my domain and now you shall never leave." Fear gripped my heart, realizing the grave mistake I had made. The hitchhiker was no ordinary traveler, but a malevolent being that had lured me into his trap. I pleaded for mercy, desperately begging for a way out of this nightmare. But it was too late. The car careened off the road, spinning out of control as if guided by an unseen force. The world outside transformed into a maelstrom of darkness and chaos. Time warped and twisted, minutes stretching into eternities, and reality itself became a shifting, nightmarish landscape. In the midst of this nightmarish ordeal, I caught glimpses of the hitchhiker's true form. A monstrous creature with elongated limbs, twisted horns, and an insatiable hunger for human souls. He reveled in my terror, relishing in the agony he had orchestrated. As the car finally came to a jarring halt, the hitchhiker's hideous grin widened. With a sinister chuckle, he vanished into the shadows, leaving me trapped in a realm of eternal darkness. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and I became a mere shell of my former self. Haunting visions plagued my every waking moment, tormenting me with the knowledge of the terrible decisions that had brought me to this. In the depths of my despair, a flicker of determination sparked within me. I refused to succumb to the fate the hitchhiker had intended for me. I clawed my way back to the remnants of reality, piecing together fragments of my shattered sanity. With a newfound resolve, I devised a plan to escape. Gathering what little strength remained, I navigated through the twisted maze that had become my prison. I faced unimaginable horrors, the hitchhiker's minions lurking in every corner. But I pressed on, driven by the desperation for freedom. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I emerged into a faint glimmer of light. The taste of fresh air on my lips filled me with hope. With one final surge of determination, I broke free from the nightmare realm, leaving the hitchhiker and his malevolence behind. Now, haunted by the memories of that fateful night, I serve as a cautionary tale. I warn those who venture into the darkness, urging them to think twice before succumbing to curiosity or recklessness. The hitchhiker still lurks out there, waiting for his next victim, eager to trap unsuspecting souls in his web of nightmares. So heed my words and remember the dangers that lie hidden in the night. Drive with caution and be wary of the choices you make, for a single wrong turn can lead to a descent into unimaginable horror.
The Moonlit Descent. The night was cast in an eerie moonlit glow as I set out on a desolate road that wound through a dense forest. It was a path I had driven countless times, but tonight was different. Tonight, an inexplicable sense of dread consumed me, as if the air itself held a malevolent secret. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, trying to shake off the growing unease that gnawed at my insides. I had always been a rational person, dismissing tales of supernatural occurrences as mere fiction. But as the shadows danced around me, whispering their ancient secrets, skepticism waned. The trees stood tall and imposing, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Their leaves rustled in the wind, producing a symphony of haunting whispers. The moon loomed above, a watchful eye bathed in a sickly pallor. It seemed to mock me, casting long shadows that twisted and writhed on the asphalt. I pressed harder on the gas pedal, attempting to hasten my escape from this ominous landscape. The engine roared, but the car crawled forward, as if restrained by an invisible force. A chill seeped through the cracked window, and I shuddered as goosebumps prickled my skin. The forest grew thicker, obscuring any trace of civilization, leaving me alone in this nightmare. Suddenly my headlights flickered, momentarily plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through my veins as I fought to regain control. The lights flickered again, and this time they went out completely. My heart pounded in my chest, its rhythm echoing in my ears. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a source of light, but the screen remained lifeless, devoid of any response. Trapped in the abyss of the night, I peered into the rearview mirror. A wave of terror washed over me as I saw a pair of pale, unblinking eyes staring back. They glowed with a malevolence that froze my blood, and a sinister grin formed beneath them. Panic surged through me, but I had nowhere to run. The car jerked forward as if driven by an invisible hand. The road twisted and turned in erratic patterns, leading me further into the heart of the forest. Shadows seemed to dance on the periphery of my vision, their forms contorting and elongating into monstrous shapes. Whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that echoed inside my mind. As I rounded a bend, a figure materialized on the road ahead. Its skin was pale, its limbs elongated and twisted. It stood motionless, its face obscured by long matted hair. The car hurtled toward it, and at the last moment the figure vanished, leaving me to question my sanity. My heart pounded like a drum as the car careened down the winding road. Time seemed to distort, stretching and warping with each passing second. The forest closed in around me, its claustrophobic grip tightening with each turn. My mind teetered on the edge of madness, the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurring beyond recognition. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the car came to a halt. Silence enveloped me, broken only by the sound of my labored breathing. I peered through the windshield, and what I saw turned my blood to ice. I had arrived at the edge of a yawning abyss, a gaping maw that seemed to swallow the world itself. The forest had given way to a desolate expanse, where darkness reigned supreme. I stepped out of the car, trembling in the face of this abysmal void. A voice whispered from the depths, resonating with ancient malice. It called to me, tempting me to take the final step into the unknown. Fear and curiosity warred within me, but I knew deep down that venturing further would lead to my demise. I turned back to my car, my only lifeline in this nightmarish realm. But to my horror, it was gone. The vehicle that had carried me here had vanished without a trace, leaving me stranded in this accursed place. Desperation clawed at my chest as I realized the enormity of my predicament. I stumbled backward, my feet carrying me away from the abyss. Panic surged through every fiber of my being, urging me to find an escape, a way out of this waking nightmare. The voices grew louder, their haunting chorus urging me to surrender, to embrace the darkness. But then, a glimmer of hope pierced the shadows. A dim light flickered in the distance like a beacon of salvation. With renewed determination, I followed its feeble glow, stumbling over uneven ground as I pushed forward. The light led me to a dilapidated cabin, its wooden structure weathered and worn. It stood alone, a solitary sanctuary amidst the desolation. With trepidation I approached the door, its hinges creaking in protest as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay and despair. Cobwebs adorned every corner, and the floorboards groaned beneath my weight. The flickering light that had guided me here illuminated a small table, upon which lay a faded photograph. As I picked it up, a chill shot down my spine. The picture showed a group of people, their faces twisted in terror. It was a captured moment of horror frozen in time. I recognized one of the faces, a face that bore an uncanny resemblance to mine. A deafening crash jolted me from my trance. The cabin shook violently, its walls trembling under an unseen force. Shadows writhed and contorted, converging upon me with an insatiable hunger. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my ears. In the midst of the chaos, a voice pierced through the cacophony. It was a voice tinged with sadness, filled with the weight of 1,000 lost souls. It whispered a name that belonged to the figure in the photograph, a name that belonged to me. Realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. I was not an innocent victim. I was a part of this nightmare. The forest, the abyss, the cabin. They were all manifestations of my own guilt and fear. I had been trapped in my own personal purgatory, a cycle of torment and self-punishment. In a final act of desperation, I tore the photograph to shreds. As the fragments fluttered to the ground, the world around me began to crumble. The cabin dissolved into mist and the shadows retreated, vanishing into the darkness from whence they came. I found myself standing on the road once more, bathed in the pale light of the moon. The oppressive dread that had haunted me was lifted, replaced by a sense of profound relief. With weary steps, I continued my journey, forever changed by the horrors I had witnessed. Driving at night would never be the same again. The memories of that moonlit descent would forever linger, a reminder of the thin veil between the tangible and the macabre. And in the darkest hours, when the moon cast its eerie glow upon the world, I would remember the horrors I had faced within myself, and be forever haunted by the terrors that lurk in the shadows.